So we started the recording of this session. We will try to go live on Facebook now. And we are live on Facebook. Today, we are fortunate to have with us a distinguished guest. Our guest today is Francesca Albanese. Francesca Albanese was appointed the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian Territories occupied since 1967 by the Human Rights Council at its 49th session in March 2022, and has taken up her function as of 1st of May 2022. Ms. Albanese is an affiliate scholar at the Institute for the Study of International Migration at Georgetown University, as well as a senior advisor on migration and forced displacement for a think tank, Arab Renaissance for Democracy and Development, ARDD. She has widely published on the legal situation in Israel and the state of Palestine, and regularly teaches and lectures on international law and forced displacement at universities in Europe and the Arab region. Ms. Albanese has also worked as a human rights expert for the United Nations, including the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights and the UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, for Palestine refugees. Please welcome Francesca Albanese.
Thank you, Faisal. And greetings to everyone. I'm really touched by such a robust presence of friends of the Palestine Museum with us, because it's a hot, steamy day pretty much everywhere. And it's very touching to see as many of you.
Okay, so Francesca, we will have a kind of an informal conversation here. So feel free to share with us any thoughts that come to mind if you like. We will also be taking questions from the audience, and we ask members of the audience on Zoom to enter your questions in the Q&A tab, and feel free to enter comments in the chat. On Facebook, please enter your questions in the comments field. So to start with, Francesca, tell us what, for the average person who is not really up to speed on the legalities of international law and the United Nations and all these things, what is a rapporteur?
Yeah.
And what is your role that you are playing now?
Yes, so special rapporteurs are an interesting category within the UN family, because there are 55, we are called mandate holders, either individual experts, independent experts, or like in my case, special rapporteurs, or as part of working groups. What unifies us is the expertise. We are appointed by the Human Rights Council as experts in a given domain, and by virtue of that expertise, we are asked to investigate and report on a given situation. Normally, it's a thematic situation, being right to food or right to health. There are, though, a small number, about 10 or 12 mandates which are geographic, like mine. The special rapporteur is a non-paid job, despite the fact that it's very burdensome. And it's something that we report to the Human Rights Council as, again, I would like to stress, independent expert. So as I was saying in the beginning, we operate under certain rules and protections and immunities of the United Nations, but we are not UN civil servants. And as such, we cannot be removed, for example, even by the UN Secretary General. Is just the Human Rights Council which can withdraw our mandate in case we misstep, we violate the terms, or we exceed the terms of our mandate. Going more specifically in what I do as a special rapporteur on the human rights situation in the OPT, the mandate lasts 6 years. And I'm required to investigate and report on Israel's violations in the occupied territory, in the territory that Israel occupied as of 1967, and report twice a year, once to the to the Human Rights Council and once to the General Assembly, but also to disseminate my finding as I deem appropriate. To investigate and report on the situation, I need to interact with states, civil society, hear from victims, and normally this happens during country visits. So I'm due to visit occupied Palestine, and also I can undertake any activity that I deem necessary within the limit of my mandate. Just to conclude, this mandate comes with some quite important limitations. It's geographic limitations, because I can only cover the 1967 occupied territory, which means not, in principle, not the fate of the entire Palestinian population, most of whom are refugees. And in fact, Faisal, my expertise, and as a former UN officer and as a researcher, as an author, is Palestinian refugees from a legal point of view. So it's interesting that I will have some constraints there that I will have to find a way to intelligently circumvent, because again, I do think that it's very important to not to project, not to add on the fragmentation the occupation has already imposed on the Palestinians. And the other limitation comes from the temporary limitation. 1967 might give the impression that the problem started in 1967. Of course, it's not like that. So again, this is where I need to be very respectful of the terms of the mandate, but also very aware that that the situation is much broader. There is a commission of inquiry which was created last year in 2021 by the Human Rights Council, which has a broader mandate than mine, can investigate the human rights situation in the causes of the violence in Israel-Palestine. And so I coordinate with them so as to make sure that there will be no overlapping, but also a very tight system of reporting on the situation. The other limitation is that the Palestinian authorities do not necessarily fall under the mandate of this special rapporteurship. And at the same time, as my predecessors, I cannot stay silent on certain violations that are extremely serious, especially the repression of civil society, which the Palestinian Authority has unfortunately indulged in over the past few years.
Thank you. Just going back to the appointment situation, how many countries and what countries are members of the committee that appointed you?
There is quite a strong vetting. There are 47 members of the council, and the special rapporteurs have to be approved unanimously. So this gives a lot. This gives a lot of backing. Of course, there was some opposition to my candidacy. What happened, and just for those of you who do not know, normally candidates apply for the position, express an interest based on solicitation from previous special rapporteurs, as it was my case, or others, but their own interest. And then they get screened by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and there is a committee of ambassadors appointed by the President of the Human Rights Council. And each ambassador represents a region a regional group. Then there is the screening, which selects a number of applicants based on competence, expertise, proven independence, objectivity, motivation, so various criteria. And then there is an interview in person with these ambassadors. It's called consultative group. The consultative group submits to the Human Rights Council's president a ranked list. Normally, it's understood that the first on the list is the most preferred candidate by the consultative group, and then the president of the Human Rights Council can retain the recommendation of the first candidate or pick the first or the second. Oh, sorry, the second or the third on the list. Yeah, my candidacy, as you might recall, as of February, as it was clear that I was in the process of being selected, and then I ranked first, and then I was appointed officially in April, created some resentment among some so-called human rights groups who started a smear campaign, but again, it wasn't expected, I believe, and this didn't change the course of events. I was appointed. Voila.
Great. Thank you. And congratulations, by the way. Obviously, the state of Israel is not going to be very happy about somebody who's coming to look and try to document and catalog their violations of human rights, as you could imagine. First of all, from the basics, do you expect to have any problem visiting and entering the occupied Palestinian territories?
You said, first of all, is there a second coming, or?
Well, I mean, if you enter there, we can ask some other questions. I mean, okay. Let's just see what your thinking is, what your expectations of whether Israel is going to let you in. Obviously, like I said, they can't be that excited about somebody coming in to check up on them.
But I think they are not, to use the expression you use, I think that the government of Israel is not particularly excited about having anyone from outside or from within the occupied Palestinian territory uttering a word about the human rights performance. It comes to mind the designation of 6 of the most reputable Palestinian NGOs designated as terrorists on the ground of never exhibited evidence. So this is it's utterly preposterous, in my opinion. Going back to your first question, do I expect Israel will pose problems to me entering? Yes, of course, because it has done this with my predecessor and with my predecessor's predecessors, Professor Michael Link and Professor Richard Falk. So yes, I do expect that they will not cooperate with the mandate. But this is highly problematic, and I will not take it as a given, as if it was normal, because it's not normal. As a member of the UN family, Israel must abide by its rules and the organization's rules and regulations. It tried to challenge my appointment. Now that I've been appointed by consensus, it makes no sense that Israel refuses to cooperate with me as a mandate holder.
What do you think the position of the United States going to be with respect to your mandate and your activities? I know the U.S. has professed and expressed a certain desire to shield Israel from any embarrassing situations at the international level, with respect to any violations of any aspects of international laws and human rights. So the U.S. has made it clear that it's going to do its best so that Israel cannot face the realities and the facts of what they're doing at the international level.
True. The United States have expressed criticism and reservations, for example, in the context of the Human Rights Council's last session vis-a-vis the work and the broad mandate of the Commission of Inquiry, which I mentioned earlier. I've not had any interaction so far with the US, and I've not heard direct concerns over my appointment. There might have been. The problem is, and so I will, as soon as it's possible, I will try to engage in constructive dialogue with the US government as well. Although, frankly, I'm not sure where it can lead us, because it's clear, and it's very clear even after the recent months. I mean, with the Shireen Abu Akleh's killing, and the US priority are not on advancing the human rights situation, or not any rights of the Palestinians. For me, first and foremost comes the right of self-determination, because anything else, any other discussion, financial aid, support for economic restoration, whatever, makes no sense. It's just a palliative. The Palestinians, under international law, are entitled to the right of self-determination, and it's a parliamentary norm of international law, meaning that it poses obligations on the international community as such, not only on Israel. So the moment these states, including the US, do not cooperate to reach that end, they are in breach with the peremptory norm of international law. And again, I mean, I decided to devote my first report to the right of self-determination because it's so central and so misunderstood, because people tend to approach it as if it was something that was to be negotiated as an outcome of the peace process. And no, this is not something that the Palestinians, the Palestinian Authority or the PLO are to prove Palestinians worthy of or have to negotiate. The right is there, is an inalienable right of the Palestinian people. It has been violated for almost a century now. It has been reestablished over and over, and is to be realized. So my responsibility is call upon states to respect their right first and foremost, and calling out the legality of the occupation first and foremost, because it's incompatible with the right of self-determination.
Unmute, yeah. Francesca, you are a citizen of Italy, correct?
So far.
And we understand that you recently had an experience given a talk to the Italian Parliament, during which one of the members of the Parliament has given you a difficult time and unreasonably objected to some of the points you were trying to make, etc. And that got reported in the news channels and the social media quite heavily. Would you like to share with us a kind of just a brief summary of what the issues were and what happened?
Yes, although I challenged that I was given a hard time, I was not given a hard time. What happened is that and he was not a parliamentarian. He was the head of the Foreign Affairs Commission of the lower chamber, the Chamber of Deputies of the Italian Parliament, who had invited me to report on the human rights situation in occupied Palestine, so as to inform their discussion, I mean, the discussions within the parliament as part of their intention to support the return to the peace process. So I was invited, and I briefed the commission, and I briefed the commission, and on two main points: the need to contextualize the pattern of violations that are occasionally reported, and the need to use international law to get out of the impasse, out of the what they call the stalemate. And after my presentation, the head of the commission attacked me for my biased account, my lack of objectivity. So this is why I say it's not that he gave me a hard time. He accused me as the mandate holder who's been appointed because of her objectivity and because of her impartiality. He accused me of lack of objectivity and impartiality. So it's more serious what it did, which I had to react to because of my mandate. It's not personal, I know. And also it denotes a confusion, a deep confusion and misunderstanding about what a UN rapporteur is. I'm not a UN civil servant. I'm an expert. I'm someone who's devoted over 15, almost 20 years to the study of human rights, and including on Palestine and Palestinian refugees, its history, and through a legal lens. So I was invited because of that. Otherwise, if they thought that I was not objective, they shouldn't have invited me. And what I found really puzzling is that what he didn't use anything I said as evidence of my lack of objectivity. He misquoted, and he said that I was inciting I was encouraging Palestinian violence by misquoting something I allegedly said in an article, in an interview. Of course, I was taken aback because I knew that those words that were not mine, but I didn't immediately think that it could be within an institutional setting as such, let alone the fact that it was my country, like an intentional manipulation of the information, which is what happened. And in fact, the head of the newspaper immediately reacted. I had said that there is, and I stand behind what I said, Israel requires, I said two different things, that Israel requires a lot of violence to keep an entire population subjugated and brutalized. And this was one. So violence is unavoidable. In order not to have that kind of violence, which, yes, triggers other violence in response, this is normal, we need to ask ourselves, what are Israeli military boots in occupied Palestine after 55 years? The use of force in international law is justified only as an extreme measure and in a defensive setting, which is clearly not the case at the moment. And then the other thing that I said was in connection with the often use of anti-Semitism and the anti-Semitic label to shut down, to curb dissent. And I said, yeah, but you might agree or disagree with BDS and with other activist groups, but eventually, if you criminalize freedom of expression, the message you pass is that there is no other avenues to resort to than violence, which is frankly not particularly controversial as a statement. So what was said is that I was saying, oh, Palestinians don't have anything else than violence to use. Know what I said. Was I disappointed? Very much so. Yes, I was very disappointed because it was my country, so I was not expected to be treated as such. But yeah, again, this is a tactic of deflection. You shoot the messenger in order not to have the message delivered. And I'm very happy because there has been such a reaction by the academia, Italian academics and others from all over the world. They wrote a letter to address the mythology that this gentleman was bringing forward of Israel, like the only democracy in the Middle East, that even Israel has dismissed, but he is still used in Italy, apparently, and also the civil society. We have not seen such an engagement in years, so at least that this is good in my view.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's delve a little bit more into the work you'll be doing. So you said your first priority had to do with self-determination. So let's say you go into Palestine, the Palestinian Territories. What is it that you will be planning on doing, and how would you investigate the subject of the right of self-determination, and what would you be expected to report on at the conclusion of that phase?
Not going to give too many spoilers. I'm writing the report right now, and I will not have a field visit, a country visit. The reason why I mean, in the beginning I wanted to go, but there was not enough time. I suspected that Israel would not cooperate with me and would not let me in, and I didn't want to take as for granted that the only opportunity I have is to go to Amman, because on the one hand, this prevents most of the people from Gaza. Actually, I don't even know if there are in previous cases, there have been people from Gaza traveling to Amman. And
you'd have to go to Rafah on the Egyptian side to meet the Gaza people. If they're allowed to leave Gaza.
This is true, but also I find that it's personally, I find it strange that I have to go to Amman to meet with the Palestinian authorities and with Palestinian civil society, knowing the difficulty and the challenges, and that, to say the least, that the Palestinians have to face, and also the cost that they have to face to travel forth and back to Amman. And so I said, no, this is not the right way. So in any case, I've engaged with the topic of self-determination from a scholarly perspective, and I've engaged with since May, since the very first weeks of my appointment, with Palestinian civil society, including with some Israeli scholars and organizations of society. I set out. I put out a call for submissions, and I've received many submissions from various groups. So what I will, just a little spoiler, what I will look at is to what extent, because let me tell you first what prompted me to go on such a loaded topic from the very beginning, and also to reassure of where I sit within the broader context and discussion, because I'm sure that in the US, as in Europe, there is this interest, at least among academics and civil society, for the apartheid discourse that finally has been sort of globalized, although there is a sort of rejection, like a walled rejection by many policymakers to even hear the word. So they stop at the moment they hear the word apartheid and do not engage on the substance. So one of the issues that struck me was that I think that the human rights organizations that have joined the Palestinians' denunciation that what Israel practices pretty much the crime of apartheid, they've done an incredible job. At the same time, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International did not touch upon the right of self-determination. And this adds on the perception that it's a political issue. It's something, as I said, that is to be negotiated. And no, this is, I have no reservation. I think that this is what I want to contribute with to the discussion. If apartheid is dismantled, what is next? Are we asking for equal rights of everyone and that's it? No, there is a right of self-determination that is to be realized first, and it means the right to choose first and foremost for the Palestinians, for their own future, their political future, their economic future, their existence of the people within the territorial unit that is being, by international consensus, and I would say considering also the UN Development International Law, agreed upon. It's the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and Gaza, as a unique territory. So I often use this Hegelian model. The status quo is the thesis. One day there might be a one state that merges Israel and Palestine, but before getting there is the need to realize that from a legal point of view, to realize that right for the Palestinian people. Otherwise, I think we will keep on facing an impasse.
So, we have some people asking how can they read your report when it comes out, where they can find it, and where they can read the prior reports from your predecessors in your position.
Yeah. The report will not be made public before the 27th of October, when I will come to the United States to present it to the General Assembly and hopefully others. And in fact, I've said since the very beginning that one of my aims through this mandate, and I can tell you and the friends in the audience more about why, but is to engage more and more with beyond the civil society in Israel, Palestine, or the Human Rights Council and the General Assembly aficionados. I want to engage with Palestinian and Jewish communities in the diaspora. And so this is why I'm so happy to have this discussion today, because I think that there is a need for better understanding of not necessarily the human rights situation on the ground, because I know that the Palestinians in general are among the most the best literate, I mean, the people with the highest level of literacy about the international law situation and where Palestine sits vis-a-vis international law. And at the same time, international law, human rights law in particular, offers ways out, offers messages, offers political solutions or ways to reorient the political solutions. And so this is why I think that by talking to the people, we can, I mean, I can help more rather than writing reports that then get shelved somewhere in the UN building. And so my predecessors' reports are phenomenal. And particularly Michael Link, my immediate predecessor, has done an extraordinary job in producing thematic reports denouncing the illegality of the occupation, articulated why settlement constitute war crimes and what are the legal avenues to seek accountability. He has produced in 2021, for example, a fantastic report pointing the fingers. It's an incredible j'accuse toward Europe, the Quartet, the World Bank, and the United States, because of them their enabling the occupation and the illegality, the pervasive illegality in the OPT. And so I do encourage you to read them. They are on the page of the Special Rapporteur's webpage on the United Nations OHCHR's website. And I think it will, I mean, probably what I'm very different at from my predecessors is the fact that I'm very active in engaging with the public, especially through media, social media, which, I mean, sometimes it exposes me. It's also a way to be more vulnerable. But again, no matter the attacks, I'm amazed and mesmerized by the support and the astonishing display of solidarity that I encounter no matter what. So thank you. Thank you very much for having my back all the time.
Francesca, is there any connection between the right to self-determination and the right of Palestinians, the right of return of Palestinians?
Yes and no, in the sense that somewhat they share the same fate of persistent denial. But I do believe that the Palestinians had the right of self-determination before it was even positively codified as a universal right. And I mean, there are many Palestinian authors who have explained why. I mean, Rashid Khalidi is one among them, but I just finished rereading his 100 Years Palestine. It's fantastic. The point, and from a legal point of view, it's very interesting because in in 1922, when the British started their mandate over Palestine, they had a responsibility to accompany the so-called Class A mandate. So those countries who were not colonized in the full sense of the term, they were deemed advanced enough in order to just need to be accompanied to independence under the supervision of an administrative power, which had no sovereignty over the territory. In the case of Palestine, the mandatory was the Brits. And all mandate A countries, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Transjordan, got independence. Even Israel, as at the end of the British mandate, the Jews in Palestine got the state of Israel. The Palestinians have never enjoyed that right. So in my view, it predates 1948. Although the right itself was codified in 1967, by the entry into force of the two main international covenants on civil and political rights and economic, social, and cultural rights. Common Article 1 focuses on the right of self-determination. The right of return, I'm happy to speak to this. I hear and I've heard since the very beginning and for 20 years that the right of return for the Palestinians stemmed from General Assembly Resolution 194, which is not correct. That right was reaffirmed in Resolution 194, which is not a resolution about the refugees. It's not a resolution about the right of return. That resolution is like a roadmap to peace. It walked on the heels of the partition plan, which had a margin of the legality because it partitioned Palestine against the will of the majority of the population, which was Arab. But besides this, the law that stood at the time, of course, there was not such a thing called the right of return, this in this article of this treaty, no, but even today you cannot find a right called the right of return. But back then, the right of return stemmed from various provisions of international law, humanitarian law, the law that applies during a time of conflict, which applied back then because Great Britain had signed the Hague Regulations, and it was unlawful to displace civilians and prevent them from returning. The only ones who could be legitimately displaced from the occupied territory or from a place where there was a conflict were prisoners of war. And the fact that they had to return was so important, so they could not be permanently displaced, was that there was a condition that peace cannot be initiated unless everyone, including prisoners of war, had been allowed to return. And then there were a number of other provisions that were just violated, like the right to property and the honor of the family, etc. There was a massive displacement, depopulation, and then the other element, a denationalization en masse after 1948, because the Palestinians were allowed to return as citizens of British Mandate Palestine, as those who remained, and get, if they wanted, illicit Israeli citizenship. This was even the partition plan. Now, I'm not saying that because I think that the partition plan was human rights law compliant. No, but if we have to be serious, this is the law that applied back then. And this is the law that the drafters of Resolution 194 understood and knew. So they looked at what was right, and they established that the refugees had to return, were entitled to return under the law that applied at that time. I hope this is clear. Sorry, it took a bit long, but you touched something I'm very jealous of.
Okay, based on some of what you said here, there's a question as to what extent you think the Palestinians can hold Britain liable for their acts that led to the establishment of the State of Israel, and is there any avenue in international law for pursuing Britain?
I will be nasty here, but I'm not going to answer this question because it goes a little bit outside, quite a bit outside of my mandate. So, because I'm not speaking as a scholar here, but as a UN rapporteur, I hope you don't mind, but I do, I mean, there is what I can say is that there are scholars who have, and historians who have articulated the necessity for Britain to look into its past and determine where the legality started. And I think that this is a very important exercise to help discussions on the ground.
Thank you. We appreciate your position. Thanks. Is anything that you're doing have any application whatsoever with respect to Palestinians' efforts in the International Criminal Court, what they're trying to do?
I do think so, and I do hope so.
And could you elaborate on those areas?
Yes, of course. Everything that an independent expert writes and says has gravitas because it comes from an expertise which is vetted and which is recognized by the United Nations. So the moment I carry out an inquiry or an investigation and I conclude objectively and with impartiality that certain violations have occurred, and I give substantive information that there is a reasoning for asking for accountability. Now, the International Criminal Court has received a number of submissions already, and will surely, the moment it's clear that there is an investigation ongoing, look at what has been produced by since it started its jurisdiction, of course, over the situation in occupied Palestine. It will look at what my predecessors have produced and what I will produce. So the way I can contribute is to make sure that whatever I write is rock solid. Now, one thing is that I do not have the capacity, for example, to preserve evidence. So this is why, until now, I've not responded to the invitation to join efforts with others and undertake an investigation on the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh. I wouldn't do that myself because I think it's important to have forensic expertise and ways to, in order to make a conclusion that is relevant. Having said that, so I think that the natural course of action would be for the Office of the Prosecutors of the ICC to send out his experts and his investigators. So what I would do is to encourage, and I've done it since the very beginning. I've sent out calls for the Office of the Prosecutors not to delay the investigation. Next in line is that there is the Commission of Inquiry, which has an opportunity to investigate Shireen Abu Akleh's case, but also as part and parcel of the widespread and systematic killing of journalists in line of duty, because Shireen, unfortunately, was not the first, and she's not been the last even to be killed while reporting on the reality of the OPT. So just again, to sum up, I can surely point to the responsibilities to investigate as part and parcel of delivering accountability and fighting impunity in the OPT. I can write information in a way that can be utilized, but again, the best I can do is also to raise awareness and to encourage others who have better capacity than I do to act upon these cases.
Francesca, we have a question from one of the audience from Vera about Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, and she's wondering why they are not concerned with the right of self-determination. Is that something outside of their domains?
Yes. Frankly, I hope what I said of Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch was not taken as a criticism. Absolutely not. I think that these organizations have done an incredible job. Now, there is no piece of work which is perfect. And I've read certain criticism from some, including Palestinian civil society organizations, which I deep, or scholars whom I deep admire. And I think that what they have done is phenomenal. At the same time was limited because Human Rights Watch could not deal for their own organizational reasons with a right which is probably so politically loaded. So it's a golden opportunity for me to clarify, you know, sort of to clear the air and say, okay, politics is outside the domain of a human rights expert. It will be the same for me. But because my predecessors have time and time again invoked the importance, the centrality, the necessity of complying with the right of self-determination, first and foremost, what I'm going to do is to say what the right is, does it apply, is it violated or not, and how the violations express themselves. Because for me, the right of self-determination is the right of all rights. And at the same time, its violation can manifest in the violation of other rights, like the rights of the freedom of expression, freedom of movement, access to natural resources, and so on and so forth. And then I'm not going to tell you anything more, otherwise you won't read the report.
All right, the next question that comes to mind is, you submit these reports, what happens to them? Is there an obligation on the part of the Commission or the UN in general to do something with what is submitted? Is there any actionable items in these reports?
Yes, international law it's binding. I mean, international law stemming from treaties, stemming from peremptory norms use cogents is binding. And so the point is that because of politics and political convenience, Israel has been sheltered. Of course, it's not the only state that is allowed to go away with impunity. But the record is quite astonishing, and also the fact that it enjoys so much support, and it's considered a normal state, as if the fact that it keeps an entire population under occupation for 55 years, it could be understood that as a violation here and there that taints Israel's reputation. No. So my role, this is why I insist on the context, and I often say, my friend Rania probably has heard it for the 100 times already, but one of the issues I often noticed in the humanitarian community which works in Palestine is that they miss the forest for the trees. I mean, again, it's all good and necessary to provide financial aids to needy Palestinians. But the Palestinians, I often remind everyone, do not need charity. They're very entrepreneurial, and they would be in a different position if there was not the longest, most protracted, and a very violent military occupation, which also sucks all of them their natural resources, being them not like water, quarries, and access to the Dead Sea, for example, and land, first and foremost, natural produce. So this is to be taken into account.
So, Francesca, you said that your position is an unpaid position. Do you receive any support towards your work? That helps you sustain what you're doing?
Yes. I have a fantastic team at OHCHR, not a big one. Actually, there are two people, one working full-time with me, the other one providing excellent input. And I'm also someone who asks a lot. So I do seek for people's input, and so I know that I cannot do everything by myself. So one of the things I'm trying to do, for example, since I came to the mandate, I tried to articulate a vision, and I've discussed it with many people. The first month, as I was not busy with interviews for what was happening with Massaf Yatta, and Shirin Abu Akleh's killing, I was trying to figure out where I would go since my first steps into the mandate with, as I said, civil society, academics, and others, and also member states. And I got a very good response and feedback. So I know what my thematic priorities are, and I also know what my modus operandi will be, my working methods. So this is why I intend to work hand in hand with the academia. I'm grateful to the Norwegian Refugee Council for helping me set up an informal academic friends of the mandate group, so that I can tap into their expertise. I'm glad to have former colleagues helping me reach out to the media when I need, advising me on how to be smart with social media, because it's not my natural cup of tea. And also, I ask civil society, please, when you provide an input, try to have it really answering the question I asked, and be structured so that I can pick on the various issues without having to reinvent the wheel, if you see what I mean.
Now, does the UN pay your travel expenses at least when
Yes.
you go to New York?
Yeah.
You should hope so.
I do have a couple of trips per year, actually more. I go once a year to Geneva for the meeting with the other special procedures, and like the other special rapporteurs and independent expert. I have, should know, 1 or 2 visits to the field, to occupied Palestine, and I intend to go. And but again, I didn't have enough time right now. And then I have a trip to New York to report to the General Assembly. Of course, there are other trips that I've already undertaken, and it's been great to be invited. I try to also for family reasons. I have 2 young kids, so I have to be very strategic. So when I go on a mission invited, I try to prioritize those missions that allow me to meet on the one hand with civil society, but also with government and parliamentarians, so state authorities, with government officials and parliamentarians, so as to maximize my presence. This is what I will aim to do.
So if you don't mind me asking, do you have a day job also?
Yes.
Besides this work that you make a living from?
Yes. It's my work with the RDD. I have an extraordinary organization. I mean, I chose a few years ago, when I finished writing the book about Palestinian refugees and international law, which many know that I refer to as my 3rd baby, because my friend Noura Erekat read it and commented, it's a labor of love. Indeed, it was like a baby. I really invested many years on it. And when I was done with it, I was really unsure about what to do. And I was grateful to find this organization in the region, ARD, which gave me, it was born as a legal aid organization work, and it had a clear, it grew also as a think tank, and it wanted to host a space to discuss Palestine in the region, because there is it's sort of demoted. It's discussed in Europe, in the West in general, but where is the region? Where are the voices of the civil society or others on the question of Palestine and in their interaction with the Palestinians? And so I built with them years ago this global network on the question of Palestine, the question of Palestine program that led to awareness raising and other activities to be more, to engage the public on the question of Palestine through the entry point of the refugees, who for me remain central to the resolution of the question of Palestine. And then, of course, as I was approaching, as I realized that I wanted to put my candidacy for, I want to apply for the post of special rapporteur. I decided to take a step back, to disengage from the question of Palestine program, but still work with this organization where I advise on the migration, forced displacement, and statelessness program. So this is my job. What pays me where I get my income from. But I have to say, I've been really poorly diligent this past months, and they've been very understanding. So thank you, colleagues at HARD.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left in the program. If anybody would like to ask a question in person, please raise your hand and I will enable you to talk. We'll give that people. In the meantime, Francesca, thank you so much for taking the time. There are glowing comments in the chat here which I will share with you after the program. A lot of compliments, and all I could think of, maybe you need like 5 or 6 bodyguards as you travel in the world.
Why? Oh. No.
Well, anyway, we wish you great success. Okay, so we have Paul McAllister would like to. So please, let's make this very brief and quick. I'm going to allow you to talk, and please unmute yourself and talk.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. And the question that I have is, I will be taking a trip next month to Israel, Palestine, and also Jordan. Is there anything in particular, Francesca, that you would like for someone such as I, who also lead a small think tank and part of a pro-Palestinian human rights group, to see and perhaps report to you about, based on your work?
Thank you so much, Paul. May I ask you, which organization are you part of?
I'm part of an organization called Voices for Justice in Palestine here in North Carolina, and I also chair a small think tank that I can talk to you about at another time.
Absolutely. And please feel free to reach out to me. I normally reply to everyone, and I'm really grateful for this kind of question and engagement. I should also say, and I will answer Paul's question in a minute, when I forgot to say, but it's impressive how many reputable universities in the past 2 months have reached out to me, Columbia University and universities in Canada offering help through researchers who would support my mandate. And of course, I'm saying yes, because the more I have, the more I will be able to be impactful. And so Paul, first of all, I think it's important. I often refer to Israel-Palestine, including in terms of solidarity, because far too often this is presented as a question of rivalry between two people, the Israelis versus the Palestinians. I think if it has ever been the case, and I do not believe so, surely it's not the case now. So I encourage you to pay attention to these, and also what are the determinants. I'm not saying that all Israelis support are in solidarity with the Palestinians. Clearly not, but we should investigate the reason why this is not the case, and where how. I was speaking to a renowned Jewish American scholar who's also Israeli recently, and he said something that struck me. He said, we have stopped to see the Palestinians. We don't see the Palestinians. It's like if the Palestinian counted nothing. And this is something that the West doesn't understand. So this is why the equality discourse is, it is to be taken with grano salis at this stage. What I would encourage you, please go to Masafer Yatta. Masafer Yatta is not the only area in South Hebrod Hills, in the southern part of the West Bank, of occupied West Bank, is not the only area which is subject to forced displacement. But you have to see the reality on the ground, and people's houses are being demolished in order to create a firing zone. A military training area. 1,200 people are being displaced as we speak, because of a firing zone, which Israel has all the rights to establish in its own metropolitan territory and not in occupied Palestine, over which it has no sovereignty, as we all well know. Please, if you go to East Jerusalem, do not only visit Sheikh Jarrah, do visit Sheikh Jarrah, but also visit the other neighborhood, because the reason why, I don't know why only Sheikh Jarrah attracts attention, probably because this is so close to where the international presence, international diplomats are. But in fact, all East Jerusalem, all the Palestinian community in East Jerusalem are exposed to violence. Go to Hebron, because Hebron is a blown in the face in terms of injustice and the brutality of the occupation. And yes, of course, I mean, these are my first recommendations, but I'm sure other ideas will pop up also. You please meet with both Israelis and Palestinians groups, because this is important. And I'm sure that, especially now, I've never seen such a wall-to-wall consensus about the gravity and the absurdity of the situation on the ground.
Great.
And do not forget Gaza, as I was about to do. I suspect it will be difficult for you to go to Gaza. But again, we shouldn't treat Gaza as if it was a separate entity. Gaza is part and parcel of what remains of Palestine, and it's part and parcel of the territorial unity deemed to be the land where self-determination of the Palestinians is to be realized.
Thank you, Paul. And now we have Joe Shadroy. Please unmute yourself to speak. Yes, go ahead. Unmute. There you go.
I just unmuted. I think that this program and all of the information given by the speaker is amazing. I don't actually have a question. I would like to get the book. I'm very interested to read her report, but other than that, I'm not knowledgeable enough to ask an intelligent question. I'm only knowledgeable enough to know that, and continue with your great work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, anyone else? I don't see any more hands. Okay, we're kind of coming to the end of the program. Again, I wanted to thank our audience for joining us today to listen to this very enlightening and inspiring conversation. Also want to thank Francesca Albanese for taking time from her very busy schedule, as you can tell, to be with us today and to share her thoughts and her passionate views on human rights for the Palestinians. And on behalf of all Palestinians, we thank you. I think every Palestinian is proud of the work you do. And thank you again. We look forward to having you join us in the future. I think most of our audience would want to hear from you again. Today's program was only an hour, and that's hardly enough to cover a fraction of the information that they would like to hear from you about. So we look forward to future appearances, and hopefully when you come to New York, you can make a personal appearance at the museum in Woodbridge, Connecticut, and have an opportunity to visit there. Also, we hope that you will visit the Palestine exhibit From Palestine with Art at the Venice Biennale before it closes on November 27th.
I will try to do everything you just said, and it was already in my mind. And can I share something before we close?
Yes.
I think that it would be splendid if we kept this kind of exchange. Every time I issue a report, twice a year, for example, after self-determination, I will be in New York. I would be happy to share the main findings with you. And after this, I intend to write a report about arrest and detention, how arrest and detention is used in occupied Palestine. So again, hopefully this information will also help those in the public better understand the reality and better see what they can do to help undo this untenable reality. Thank you very, very much. It was great.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And we hope to see you next week. And as we always say at the end, ma salama.
Ma salama. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Faisal.